Australian rugby is one that I think it just keeps popping up as a little bit of a nightmare. But the whole ecosystem here in the Southern Hemisphere, where does this go? The news throughout the week that obviously New Zealand Rugby has courted South Africa for biennial tours between the two nations. Where does that leave Australian rugby? Where does that leave Argentinian rugby? It feels like New Zealand has come crawling back, doesn't it? After blowing up Super Rugby, they would argue, and the power brokers at the time would argue, that South Africa already had one foot in Europe anyway, and they kept threatening to leave. So, this was just finishing the job that South Africa had already started. But we now realise the folly of that. Some of us at the time thought it was folly at the time, and many people now are waking up to the fact that this was just the dumbest, getting rid of the South Africans out of Super Rugby. But where now do we turn to Australia? Australian rugby's in a shambles. We treat them badly. And I've long said this, and feel free to get in touch, 8833 if you differ. You cannot treat your closest ally as badly as New Zealand Rugby has treated Australian rugby. You can't do it, especially when you've got no other friends in the world.
Yeah, we're stuck down here in the middle of nowhere, aren't we? And we can't seem to get any resolution between both sides. So, look, it's bloody sad, Sumo. We've harped on about the South African exclusion from Super Rugby and how just what a big downward spiral. I can't understand how we've done it. We've talked about it on the show. You go and read all the conversations online and people are like, well, you got rid of us. You don't want us. I'm just thinking, how the hell did we not want South Africa a part of our own system here? And it's been a downward spiral. And there's going to be some big announcement today for Super Rugby and some changes, Sumo. Is there? It's going to be interesting to see what actually comes out. What changes are we expecting? Are we going to have an inclusion of another nation? Is it just going to be the same? Oh, there might be a few tweaks with some rules, etc., etc. Maybe the formatting, the finals scenario that might potentially play out. It's going to be interesting, but, mate, right now it is so bloody bad. And Ben Youngs has fired tax at Rugby Australia. The England star Ben Youngs says the Lions should tour South Africa instead. And then Phil Wall's come out, and Phil Wall has done what many
Ben
shouldn't
Youngs
do.
has basically come out and said we don't want to play Australia. Are you kidding?
Yeah, he went on a podcast and said basically that the British and Irish Lions should tour South Africa instead. And then Phil Wall's bit, and I said, mate, don't bite, just keep silent and keep going about your work. And the reality is that the British and Irish Lions are going to be majority of the Irish team. So I don't know what Ben Young's on about.
So true. Look, I realise that Australian rugby is in a bit of a nadir at the moment, but if you want everyone to be strong, I'll give you an example. Would the NRL let a club fail?
No.
Would any competition in the world, worth its salt, see a club struggling and let them fail? Rugby does this all the time. Look at the Premiership, English Premiership. Let two clubs go under. Didn't step in, can't step in, have no power to step in because there's no financial clout to step in. There's no financial clout in rugby union to get Australia out of its financial hole. Where is the money in the game? If this game was so good, if it was so well run, if the competition was so compelling to the viewers and the broadcasters, where is the surplus of cash? Gregor Paul wrote a really intriguing piece in the Herald this morning, might have been yesterday. Yeah, talking about rugby league versus rugby union. I mean, look at the surpluses the NRL are bringing in every year. Look at their broadcast deal in Australia. Look at the way they feed back to the clubs. Look at the salary caps. Look at the continued commitment and connection with the club game and the grassroots game. They've got everything that rugby thought it had for 100 years. And now it doesn't. And so when you have a look at Australia's travails and problems, you start thinking to yourself, you'd love to be able to help out here. The Southern Hemisphere could stick together to be a block, to actually build together, to reap the rewards of operating as a team. But then when you boils down to it, there's no money there to help anyone.
So when you're saying helping, Sumo, I know the broadcast deal for Super Rugby, they get a small piece of that pie, don't they? Rugby Australia, because of the dominance of New Zealand rugby.
Well, South Africa used to take a huge proportion of that broadcast deal as well. And this is why New Zealand wanted out, because they wanted a bigger slice of the pie. But they might have got a bigger slice of the pie, but the pie got smaller.
How do we help them? Are you saying we share because the depth over there is lacking?
Well, I have long said that if you are playing
So we just
club footy in Super Rugby, then play for any club.
Any club?
Any
so
club.
draft system, bang, go and throw them up, and then
mate,
share the talent.
At the very least, grow up and be a professional club competition. Grow up.
SENZ. It's Kiwi for Sport.